or I think the worst build was the tank.
Okay, yeah.
So because obviously there's a romance scene inside of it.
Yeah.
And actors had to be able to move in it, so that still gives us nightmares.
In September, we flew to Warsaw to document the launch of Phantom Liberty. While we were there, we shot dozens of interviews, some of which never made it into the final cut. This interview and tour of the mocap studio is one of those shoots we had to cut. If you enjoyed this, be sure to check out our full documentary on the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, our skill tree breakdown with a gameplay designer, and our spoiler chat with Phantom Liberty's director.
Hello! Hey, we brought some television. Here's where many of the scenes took place.
So this is our motion capture studio. We use Viking system. We've got 104 cameras. Both the base game and the EP one were shot here. All of the gameplay is done here. In terms of shooting, we put very funny suits with shiny bubbles on them.
Pajamas?
Yeah, PJs, yeah. They tend to look sort of unusual, but actors have a lot of fun going outside to the canteen or petrol station buying cigarettes.
So normally when they're acting, there's someone directing, like...
Yeah, so we have internal directors from animation and cinematics. They take care of that. We use both internal actors and we hire professionals as well.
When you guys are doing filming, is there a lot of differences between when you're shooting for like a third person, like with Witcher, versus like first person with Cyberpunk, like considerations you have to make?
So yes and no, because the game isn't just a player.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you think about all of the villages in Witcher,
right,
you have to fill them with NPCs. It's same stuff with Night City, where you have more NPCs than in The Witcher. But player-wise, yes, it does make a difference, because shooting first person, you don't have to think about whether this hand goes well with a gun, because obviously that's then done in gameplay. It's not recorded. And with third person, you pay more attention to it because it has to look good on screen. So for instance, you never see V's face unless it's a cinematic. So again, head becomes unimportant, whereas with The Witcher, yes it is, because you constantly see it.
Right. Makes sense.
But a lot of it is driven in gameplay. So for instance, like panning the camera, obviously that's driven by player's motion.
Right.
And then going back to cinematics, then again, there is no difference, because then you see player in both. Motion capture is very sensitive to vibration, so the cameras have to, at all times, know where the other cameras are. So if you were to walk up and, I don't know, just say we're throwing a ball and we hit a camera with a ball, if it offsets, then it becomes useless pretty much to us.
Wow, okay.
And we have to either recalibrate or reposition it and recalibrate. So obviously with a building not being stable, a door slam could ruin the calibration of the system.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be an issue for, especially with, how many cameras did you say?
104.
104.
Obviously, so people in the industry know about this, but like this length of a truss, it responds to temperature. So we have to, when we're shooting, we put the aircon like the day before, so the temperature is stable, and cameras themselves generate heat as well. And obviously metal expands with heat, so we tend to, on this length of truss, we tend to get like up to 3 millimeters difference if temperature varies. And for system is a game changer, because data shot in a cool morning may not be usable in the hot afternoon, because the length of the truss has changed.
What would happen if that were the case? Like,
so
how would you see that in?
If it expands, so on the system, so physically it expands, so the distance between like end cameras will be different, and that changes the position. So you either start seeing like a duplicated character, or if it's really, really bad, it starts to sort of look like bees flying.
Okay.
And obviously the more noise you get, the more work has to be put in to make it usable in a game. So we try to keep it, again, as perfect here as possible, because then it reduces the workload down the line.
Yeah. Cheers!
We sort of dived into 3D printing our props.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The weapons, we tend to get like stock training weapons and just put markers on them. Some of them we build ourselves, so that sniper rifle. It's just...
What'd you do with that?
That's like a helmet.
That's a fake helmet. Put it on.
Yeah, well. It's kind of like this.
Oh.
Yes. What was it used for?
Because it was the request to record the taking helmet off, and the tricky part is that we have markers on the actor's head, on the hat, so we can't cover them. So that was the issue, how to make this movement of taking helmet off.
Yeah, it's all based on line of sight, so if it's occluded, then the system
This is
doesn't
for the
see it.
secret game of cooking simulator that you're doing after hours.
Well, if you think about this, there are a lot of food vendors in Cyberpunk. You get plenty of stalls with people preparing food, so that's what
It's actually for that.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
So all that stuff is motion captured too, then, just like people working behind that. Interesting.
Yeah. Like majority of our shoots is gameplay, so
Okay.
all of the actions that player can take or NPCs can take in the game, but
So
also
things like plugging in the okay.
the USB ports.
Yeah.
And cinematics we shoot here. So those are more complex shoots because we have to sort of like create a physical environment for the actors to interact with. So it all matches like the virtual environment. So we get a request with a sort of section of Night City, and then we have to have a physical representation of it. So if you say walk up to the counter, place a hand on it, so actor has to have a physical object that he can rest on or she can rest on.
Sure.
So there's plenty of that. So Pavel is in charge of building, so all of our layouts and sets gets prepared by Pavel and a few other members of the team, and the rest of us are techies.
How long do you have to build that stuff out? Like when you get, okay, here's the scene, here's what we're going to shoot.
Yep.
And then it goes over to you, and then you have some time to build out sets, or?
It depends in complexity of the shoot, but it's something from 1 week to even 1 day. We can prepare. We can like have a meeting with animators, prepare stuff, and next day we are technically ready. But it depends on the scope of the session. I don't know. Let's say there are many animators, and each of them want to record different stuff. So sometimes it's like you build a bar, and the next shot is interior of the car, and so on, right? So it all depends on that, how complex
So
it's gonna
if
be.
you sort of think about a scene where Placide walks with V to a banister in Pacifica,
Yeah.
we've got a prop ready made for that. You just put it out into the middle. But also you can have something like V's apartment, where you have got rooms and many more objects to interact with. Or I think the worst build was the tank.
Okay, yeah.
So because obviously there's a romance scene inside of it, and actors had to be able to move in it. So that still gives us nightmares.
Well, that's actually a good transition, because I was going to ask if the sex scenes were shot in here.
Yeah, so all of the sex scenes were shot here, and actually we sort of had like a very sort of comfortable arrangement because the studio was locked, there was no outsiders, minimal crew, and so nobody walked in, nobody walked out.
Sure.
And I think those were the longest shots that we shot during the game, because normally we tend to cut it for like 2 minutes and then we cut, because obviously that improves processing times. But for those scenes, actors were dictating the pace, and I think the longest was around 6, maybe 7 minutes. We didn't interrupt them, but we wanted them to sort of get in the scene, feel comfortable, and then,
And then, people were just kind of try not to interrupt too much and just not intrude.
Yeah, so that's why we locked the studio, and it was like really private space. Normally we get like people walking in and out. There was just one director, actors, and a couple of techies, and that was it.
The weirdest prop you've had to hunt down,
Oh my god,
if you can think of any on the top of your head.
weirdest prop.
I don't know if it's the weirdest, but going back to food vendors, I don't know if you can find the physical object in the studio anymore. But before we had nice lighting, we had like just sort of ceiling lightings, and we had no wok, and it was precisely the shape that we needed, so we basically took one lamp down and used it as a wok. In mocap we've got the privilege of being able to do everything with almost nothing.
Yeah.
And we're probably the only department that actually collects garbage. So, going back to the sniper rifle, this is actually like a wrapping from a fridge.
Oh,
So you get like this.
part of that doesn't
Yeah,
look like a gun.
yeah, no. Just literally some equipment was brought in, so can we have that? And we just taped it together, put it on a gun, and we got a sniper.
Yeah, we also have stuff like this, but we don't use it
On your colleagues?
on the colleagues. Yeah. You can, I don't know. Actually, yeah, we use this prop only for this movement because it's
Yeah.
so hard to fake.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in one of the Street Kid introduction, right? Doesn't one of the cops do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the reason why we keep it here.
Cuff linked broken so this trash doesn't flow.
You heard him. Fuck.